Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Day 2 of the Greenprint Registry Showcase, where we cover ESGpedia use cases for the real economy. We're thrilled to have everyone join us today, in person or virtually, to witness how ESGpedia is already in place today and empowering multiple sectors across Asia towards sustainability and net zero. For Day 1 yesterday, we showcased 4 exciting use cases of ESGpedia, spanning across investment bond portfolio monitoring, transportation and logistics, agriculture, and hospitality and buildings. Now, jumping into Day 2 today, we have an equally exciting lineup showcasing ESGpedia applications in hospitality and buildings, supplier sustainability monitoring, natural rubber, and fashion and textile. I'm Yvette, Business Development Manager at STACS, and I'll be your MC for today. Before we begin, we'd like to express our sincerest thanks to guest speaker Mr. John Leung, Director of Southeast Asia and Oceania at the Carbon Disclosure Project, for gracing our event today. We'd also like to extend our gratitude to our partners who will be speaking today and sharing more on our collaborations in the various sectors. We'd also like to thank our official event partners, PwC Singapore and Singapore FinTech Association, for jointly organizing today's event. Last but not least, we thank you all for joining us today at the Greenprint Registry Showcase. Here at PwC Singapore today, we have 100 in-person attendees and 250 attendees tuning in virtually. The audience represents a wide mix of financial institutions, corporates, and NGOs. Thank you, everyone, for being with us today. We are in an era where climate action is rapidly gaining traction across all sectors of society. At the foundation of such movements, there needs to be robust ESG data to enable performance tracking and informed decision-making. ESGpedia is well-positioned as a one-stop ESG data registry with complementary functionalities to enable better ESG data, supplier sustainability monitoring, and sustainable finance. Without further ado, I'm pleased to invite on stage guest speaker Mr. John Leung to give his opening address, please.
Thank you, Yvette. Thank you, STACS, for inviting me. Just before I begin, I was wondering where to stand, and Ben said the best side, so this is my best side apparently. So I'm going to stand here, and this is. Oh, it is the same shirt. Oh my gosh, yeah. Well, if you take another picture, then you could reuse it again. But hey, I've got quite a few slides actually. It was really hard to condense everything in 15 slides. But let me just begin by John Leung, Director of Southeast Asia and Oceania. Kind of green-friendly, posh way of saying Australia, New Zealand. CDP, ESGpedia. So where do we fit in? For those of you who don't know, CDP, Global Disclosure Platform, founded in 2000, and actually had the privilege of being with my founding chairman this morning. He's actually here to present a keynote address tomorrow at Singapore FinTech Festival in Hall 5 at 1 p.m, Paul Dickinson, and it was a pleasure for him to get to know him a bit better and understand the journey. But we've been going since 2000, and I guess we're the leaders and gold standard, if you like, in this global disclosure and collecting data. But rather than me bang on about it, and it's the afternoon, I thought I'd better show a video. So let's do this.
Climate change is clearly one of the biggest challenges facing our time.
We see local producers who cannot produce raw materials anymore. We see in our value chain the consequences of climate change.
There is increasing concern. There's an escalating concern. And I think there's a sense from investors that this is real and not going away, and of increasing importance in terms of how to invest.
We started our transformation from black to green energy a decade ago, and we could really see that our business foundation in black energy was disappearing. Today, we are the greenest energy company in Europe, and we have clearly learned a lot from reporting into the CDP and our sustainability work.
I think that disclosure on our environmental performance is extremely important. And one of the first tools that helped us doing so was CDP.
The investor research that CDP carry out is really detailed, high quality investment research. That enables us to be able to differentiate the performance of companies and pick those that look like they will have the best prospects for long-term investment.
Being part of a reporting framework means that you disclose under certain standards. And we believe that you want to disclose in order for your stakeholders to be able to double check if what you're saying is actually true.
We are particularly proud when we receive the CDP ratings, and that is of course of extremely important added value. I think what is very important as a company is that you do not just respond to disclosure. I think it's important that you do not just want to satisfy also extra financial rating agencies. The important thing is that it's really at the heart of your business.
Companies themselves understand that they will have to take increasingly dramatic choices to remain sustainable in order to have the confidence of their investors and wider society and have a license to operate. And we prefer sources of metrics which are pure in their form so that we can understand the underlying data. And CDP is the best go-to source for that information.
There you go. End of my presentation. No, just kidding. All right. Global Independent Environmental Disclosure System, just quickly summarize that we're an NGO, global NGO. I just updated this slide. 20,000 entities now disclosed in over 90 countries, CDP, about 64% of the world's market cap, and we collect that data. Ben wanted me to talk about supply chain, which I will do, address in the future slides, but we have over 280 global purchasing companies asking about their supply chains. That includes people like Walmart, Apple, interrogating their tier one supply chains to be greener. And 700 institutional investors requesting that information, so the likes of GIC, Easprings, HSBC, JP Morgan, Bank of France, buy our data and also request companies to disclose voluntarily. It is voluntary, by the way, it's not mandatory. Only regulators can create mandatory disclosure, which is coming. So, next slide. Ben mentioned about lots of standards. It is an alphabet super standards, but having been there since the year 2000, we're very much at the forefront of TCFD, as I found out this morning, advising Mark Carney at the time. Although we weren't credited with that, we created the framework, and we still run today the Knowledge Hub on TCFD. CDSB was part of CDP, is now absorbed into ISSB, and you'll see a new global standard coming out. The framework's already out, but you'll see the standard coming out early next year. And of course, we were part of a founding member of the Net Zero Asset Managers Initiative, very much founding member of the science-based targets with WWF, UN Global Compact, WRI, and also for TNFD we're involved. There is a consolidation of standards, which is good. This is good news. And as CDP, we like to try and always maintain and keep up with the latest standards for the best disclosure. How we work, data analysis is at the forefront of what we do, collecting data, requesting authorities like GIC request that data from institutions. We have thematic questionnaires, of which we have climate change, forests and water at the moment. We're also going to be launching our SME questionnaire in 2023. And we very much target the large companies and supply chains at the moment, but next year you'll see a step change in SMEs. Why do you want to disclose? Well, if you cannot measure your climate change impact, you cannot manage it. And this is the path we have for disclosure. Obviously, disclose, create the foundation, calculate, set a target, and eventually set a science-based target, which is quite onerous, but it's the only way really to drive net zero is getting on this path. Powering the ESG ecosystem. We work with a lot of people. It's a privilege to be a catalyst and to have grown over the last 20 years to work with regulatory bodies, work with leading indexes, and obviously work with people like MAS and Central Bank, which is why I'm here. This is slightly old. It has been updated, or we're updating it for 2022, but In Asia Pacific, we are at about 6,000 plus disclosing companies, which comprise of listed companies, but being Asia Pacific, as you can imagine, probably about 3,000 or 4,000 supply chain companies in that list. As being, you can see the large number here for China. So supply chain, this is for you, Ben. Disclosure to influence behavior of supply chains. As mentioned, we have major purchasers disclose requests to their tier 1 suppliers. We have institutional investors, I can never say that properly, like GIC, requesting. And all that data is from 3 questionnaires in climate change, forests, and water security. And that is fed back. Now, this is a slide just to sort of highlight, it's not just about climate. People tend to overlook water and forests. But you can see here, the tropical forests do impact what only provides 23% mitigation. 75% of global fresh water depends on forests. So it's circular. It is not one thing. Yesterday, there was quite a lot of talk about renewable energy, buildings, energy, but actually not very much on water. And I wanted to highlight that. And I'm just going to pick a couple of slides to emphasize how everything's interconnected. So when you talk about forests, hopefully this is going to change now because we've got a new president in Brazil, Lula, who's come back, and he's very pro the environment. And so we'll hopefully see this reduce in terms of the number of, the amount of deforestation going on. But these are all the industries that are affected within deforestation. It's not just food supply, it's things like soy, using in emulsifiers, it's wood fibers. So just don't think of it as rainforest being cut down for beef production, etc. It is everywhere. And then in terms of water security, I re-emphasize it is an overlooked concern. There is massive risks, and you've only got to look at what happened in Pakistan recently and the flooding and the devastation, and it's becoming more and more common factor every year. I'm not going to read out these headlines, but I think it's pretty obvious where the financial risk is there. So, Scope 3 emissions. When we talk about supply chain, if you ever want to get to net zero as an institution, organization, you cannot do it unless you control your Scope 3 emissions, generally your supply chain. And we found out that it's 11.4 times higher in terms of your supply chain emissions. The key sectors being retail and apparel, and then followed by services. So this is a report we've done recently, which is freely available on our website. And it'd be remiss of me not to give a case study of how you can influence through financing. So this is an ongoing project with Walmart in the US that are trying to, obviously Walmart being such a huge organization, and what's their plan? Well, obviously they're tackling it through the largest concern, which is their Scope 3 emissions, and asking their suppliers, tier 1 suppliers, to disclose and incentivizing them through sustainability-linked loans and financing as driven by HSBC in this example. And it's proven to work. It's a 10-year plan, and they're more than 50% of the way in reducing gigatons of their Scope 3 emissions. And again, that case study is available if anyone wants to have a look at that. Disclosure works. So first-time disclosures and how much they do for sort of emission reductions, it increases as they carry on disclosing. So this is why we want to drive disclosure, this is why there is ESG Genome through SGX, you may have heard of, which is essentially mandatory disclosure on a basic level, but hopefully it'll ramp up to be a lot more detailed. Data use. So as a data collector, what do we do with all that data? Well, we produce some nice reports. So here we've got stuff on palm oil, water, cities and climate actions. We have over 1,000 city, states and regions that disclose to us annually. global temperature ratings, and global supply chain. All these reports, all this analysis is freely available on our website. Second to last slide. We're the first NGO to sign an MOU with MES, so it's a very real privilege. And we did this in March when we opened our office here. So that's me and Darian. And this is sort of our contribution to Greenprint. We provide them with our data, scoring data, and obviously STACS and I are looking at how we can even improve that relationship going forward, especially around SMEs. And I want to finish just quickly on this last slide. I'm going to let you read it. So Ban Ki-moon said this quite a while ago, and it is just so true. We're all on a shared mission here, and we're not really in any competition with anyone. Some of you might be because you're for profit, but I like to think it's for profit, people and planet now, and we can all get on and create a positive environment for competition. So without further ado, thank you very much. Ben.
Thank you very much, Mr. Leung, for opening today's event with that insightful message. And thank you also for your overview of CDP's work in enabling ESG disclosures for companies and organizations. Moving on, I'm extremely pleased to now invite on stage Mr. Benjamin So, co-founder and managing director at STACS. STACS is a Singapore-headquartered fintech company focused on ESG fintech in partnership with MES Project Greenprint. Ben will be speaking about how ESGpedia and Carbonpal enable the democratization of decarbonization and carbon offsets. Ben, please take it away.
Thanks, Yvette. Hello, it's me again. Yeah, so thanks everyone for coming, and thanks, John. I was very moved by your speech. Every time John, talks about climate, talks about the scale of, the carbon emissions that we are facing, I always feel, tremendous, that we need to take a lot of action now. Okay, and I guess that's the theme, that we are trying to talk about in the, this week. Some of you were here yesterday. I talked about taking action, right? So I think we're trying to do it all the way around. So some of you would have received our goodie bag. Inside are actually sustainable water bottle and cutlery. Yeah, so utensils, so that you can use for your meals. So I think this is just the bare minimum, but there's a lot more that we can do. Yeah, and of course, I'm very grateful for all of you taking the time. Many of you are taking the time both days to be here. Okay, so we are very grateful for that. Okay, I think that's a very positive action that you're taking too. So thank you very much. Yeah, then for today, okay, so we will be talking more about the carbon markets today. Yeah, so yesterday we covered about ESGpedia. Okay, today we will be talking more about carbon markets. Okay, where our solution fits. Okay, so when we talk about carbon markets, right, the first thing to acknowledge is there are certain pain points in the carbon markets. Right, so this is where, when we have been speaking to multiple stakeholders in the last 6 months, okay, we have realized that many of them have come up with a common pain points. So firstly, there's fragmentation in the market. So we have to deal with a lot of different types of fragmented sources, standards, markets, frameworks. Okay, so that's the first problem that we are facing. Second, there are already some offset programs out there, publicly available. Sometimes there's a lack of transparency. There's a lack of transparency and traceability in the buyer's offset transactions. So even if I want to buy a carbon credit, it's not immediately transparent. It's not traceable from my purchase to the project. Okay, so all of these often lead to negative publicity. Some of these news articles that you find online, right, or even these videos that make fun of carbon credits, right? So typically, this is the result. When you don't have a well-developed mechanism or well-developed infrastructure, right? So that will actually hinder markets, okay, to be able to scale up, to be where we need to be, right? So having this context in mind, we think that, to design a holistic solution, we're going to need these following features, which is number one, right? As John mentioned, you need to be able to measure what you can mitigate. So we need rigorous accounting. We need to account, for the footprint of what we do. Okay, it needs to be accurate so that we have a picture of what we are trying to achieve, of what we're trying to accomplish. Okay. Number 2, transparency, right? For the various companies or entities that are trying to go to net zero, how are they doing it? Okay, are they doing it simply via offset? Are they actually decarbonizing? And when they do these carbon offsets, are they being transparent about it? Okay. Third point, collaboration. So the entire carbon market has a huge, value chain. Right? There's many different services involved, many different personas. There are investors, there are financiers, there are project, there are developers, owners, okay, and of course certification bodies. So that's where you see a lot of collaboration required. Okay, our role is to try to provide technology to enable this collaboration in a seamless way, because we believe in tech. All right, so it's only when collaboration happens, okay, that's where we can cover an entire holistic solution. So with that background, okay, we designed a holistic solution towards net zero. So yesterday we talked about ESGpedia, right? A common platform, a registry that aggregates and harmonizes various types of data from different industry sectors. Okay, different types of verified ESG data, okay, from different industries into one platform for multiple usage for structuring into various financial sector use cases. So if you missed yesterday, that's absolutely all right. We have recordings of the session yesterday. Okay, we will be able to make them available later on, right? Today, we also have 5 other sessions besides myself, right? We also have 5 other examples or case studies of how we are, using ESGpedia. But of course, today I would like to focus a little bit more on Carbonpal, which is our additional service that we leverage off our work on aggregating data and harmonizing data across multiple industry sectors, including carbon credit registries. So that's where we are therefore able to provide a digital service for end-to-end traceability of transactions from origination to retirement. Okay? So specifically to the carbon credit registry, or industry, we mentioned ESGpedia aggregates many different sectors, but specifically to carbon credits, what we have done further is that besides integrating with the Vera and Go registries, or even recently we started to integrate with TIVA, the Thailand registry, okay, we have also gone further to aggregate data from the DMRV providers. So we have a good network and ecosystem of DMRV platforms. So these are digital measurement, reporting, and verification, where they are able to provide, data directly from the projects. Okay, so they have a variety of satellite, drone, AI, technologies. They are able to feed data to support, their claims as they try to get certified, okay, on the registries, on the standards. Okay, so these data are aggregated on our platform, firstly. Now, secondly, after certification, there are carbon credits that are generated. So these carbon credits that are out in the market, they may be traded or bought by for offsets by certain entities. So all of these transactions are also recorded on ESGpedia. Okay, all of these transactions are also recorded and aggregated according to a profile, according to a project, or according to an entity. So that's how we try to have all of this data in one single platform. Okay, and in Carbonpal, what we've done also is that we have enhanced this process with a carbon footprint assessment. Okay, so we are able to provide carbon footprint assessment of individual products that will be able to give you a picture of your carbon footprint of every single thing that you use or buy. Right? That is also coupled with a solution where we record every single transaction on our digital platform on a line-by-line basis. Okay, again, it will be aggregated into our platform. Okay, so to dive a little bit deeper into how it all comes together, so we have a real use case now. So this use case, to be more exact, is actually going to be launched next Tuesday, okay, when I'm at COP27. Yeah, so it's going to be launched next Tuesday while I'm in Egypt, but we have a team also, launching it here in partnership with a global e-commerce brand. Okay, so this is going to be launching next week. So this global e-commerce brand is a name that everybody knows. Okay, it has itself been in business for more than 20 years. They have more than 200 million active customers on their e-commerce platform. So, their products, interestingly, why are they able to, be so, progressive? It's because they actually own the entire manufacturing supply chain. So they know every single product that they produce, the type of material that has been put in, okay, the logistics that have been used, so that it's different from the time when I buy this product in Singapore. If I buy it from, let's say, if I'm in China, for example, the logistics footprint would be different. So having all of this, expertise has allowed us to be able to partner where they are therefore able to provide accurate carbon footprint calculation of every single product that they carry, from cradle to grave, okay, from the factory to the gate. Yeah. So that's where, okay, partnering with them, we have a very accurate carbon footprint calculation of every product. We then further, okay, embed a service, okay, into their e-commerce website. So at the checkout function itself, okay, at the checkout function, when they're trying to purchase these products, okay, the consumers will be able to get a choice to be able to offset this footprint. Okay, so this is something that's really quite meaningful to me personally, because I myself, okay, unfortunately I travel a fair bit, okay, so I've been in a few different countries in the last few weeks. So, every time I do that, every time I fly, I try to look for a carbon offset function. But, just looking for this carbon offset function is not so easy, right? Okay, for example, okay, shouldn't be so specific, but, one of the airlines that is based in Singapore, not so many, their carbon footprint offset button, okay, it's not in the same page as their, checkout page. So you have to be looking out for the for the offset page, which is on a different page altogether, to be able to be able to offset your footprint. Okay, and I also went to Thailand, right? So the airline company that I took to fly to Thailand, which was a Thailand company, okay, similarly, they couldn't have this offset in the checkout button, okay. And even worse, they had a separate page that didn't work. So in other words, it went to a broken link. Okay, so all of these point towards, okay, frankly, they were just outsourcing their services to a third party and couldn't keep it online. Yeah. So what we have done as a major upgrade, firstly, is that this offset functionality is embedded within the payment itself. And the reason or the secret behind this is simply because we partner with a payment gateway. So besides an e-commerce brand, we also have a partnership to implement this as part of the payment gateway process, which means that besides paying, I also have an additional button called offset, right? Accurately, the footprint that has been calculated. And once I decided to do so, these fractional transactions are now recorded on the ESGpedia carbon credit page that I was just describing previously. Every single transaction on a fractional basis, because quite frankly, not many of us will be able to use up 1 ton of carbon in any transaction. Yeah. So for example, I actually learned from them that a cup of flat white coffee is actually 0.96 kg. Yeah. Which is really interesting because the footprint is heavier than its actual weight. Yeah. We don't really drink 0.96 kg of coffee right away, but the footprint is 0.96 kg. So when I flew to Bangkok, okay, and back, return, and it's different for economy class and business class, right? So as I was flying economy class, it was $3.50, whatever the footprint was, which is definitely less than a ton. Yeah. So I think it's really interesting that we are able to break down all these numbers, okay, and then because we are now able to support fractional transactions, which means that I do not need to buy 1 ton, okay, because on the carbon markets today, the typical unit is 1.0. Yeah, now I'm able to purchase fractional transactions, have this recorded on the line by line. Hey, hi, Yulin. Long time no see. Okay, and also, okay, have all these transactions aggregated, okay, and very transparent onto this independent profile. Yeah, okay. So I think that's the second upgrade that we bring. Okay, first upgrade was basically a offset within the payment function. Second upgrade, okay, enhancement, is definitely because I can now see my transaction on a fractional level. Okay, again, without naming names. Okay, there's a Singapore bank that has started doing this carbon offset function inside the app. Okay, there's also a transport, app, super app that allows me to book rides, right? So all of these offset programs, very good, well-intentioned, right? Good intentions. However, they do not show me where my money goes to. It might be $3 only, right? It might be $5 only. However, I'm unable to see where did my $5 go to. okay, that I cannot see the causal link of my $5 and the project. Okay? Whereas what we have right here is, every single retirement or Vera or goal could be one credit. Out of that one credit, or one block as I call it, okay, could be multiple transactions, could be 10 transactions, where every one of them is recorded on our platform with the timestamp, okay, with the individual number of unit, with a unique ID that the consumer is going to get via an email from our service. Okay, so that's where you finally map it back to Vera and Gold standard. Yep. So this entire service is something that, as I mentioned, personally I'm feeling is quite interesting and very meaningful because I will be using it too. Okay, and it allows for therefore enhanced inclusivity where we can really get the whole of the community working together. Okay, whereby consumers can see it, can feel it, can do something, and you can see some engagement and positive impact driven on a society-wide level. And that's what we already have. Carbon credits fractionalization use case launching next week of this technology service that we built. Okay. Then of course here are some screenshots. Okay, actual screenshots of the page. We just need to turn it on next week, where we have already embedded this functionality of offset. Okay, in the checkout function. Okay, with a carbon footprint calculator to calculate your laptop footprint, for example. And when you are able to perform this checkout, okay, and when you have the choice to offset your footprint, okay, you will be given a ID, okay, a certificate if you may, okay, to be able to show that you have offsetted a certain amount of footprint. In this case, it is 1.23 tons, okay. And have all of these transactions, okay, recorded on our platform, line by line, including fractional transactions, and aggregated back to, okay, the merchant profile. So in other words, okay, one thing I forgot to mention is that, besides serving this e-commerce brand, because we are working with a payment gateway too, we are definitely going to be able to expand this to multiple merchants. Yeah, so this e-commerce platform is the first one that we're going to work with, but we are already through the payment gateway, also talking to many other merchants who will be interested to launch this after our first launch. Yeah, in other words, we might have, I don't know, maybe 10, 20 merchants very quickly. And that's where, every one of the merchants will be able to have their transactions, okay, categorized by merchant, okay, where it's all recorded here, harmonized into a single merchant profile. And also, okay, have every single transaction recorded, okay, with their timestamp, okay, with their vintage, okay, and the beneficiary of the retirement. So every single transaction is recorded. Okay, so if I, Benso, right, I purchase a carbon credit and I want to be named, okay, I'm able to see my name, okay, in the ESGpedia platform being recorded. And of course, on the project level, okay, any project, there's all the transactions from history, okay, origination to retirement to for the entire life cycle of the project would be recorded too, okay, and across, okay, different registries. Okay. So a lot of these things that we do actually we are doing it in support of global standards, right? So firstly, we want to support greater transparency of projects, right? So we want to be able to aggregate, harmonize different types of data of different industries. And by the point that, we are integrating or aggregating data from different types of, platforms and registries, we ultimately hope to be aligned with the Climate Warehouse Initiative. Of course, the Climate Warehouse Initiative has also just launched a Climate Action Data Trust just last week, right? And it's going to be hosted in Singapore. We are quite looking forward to it because we think that, okay, we could definitely be at least a user right away, okay, and also we want to be a contributor if we can, right? So this is definitely aligned, with this initiative where we aggregate different types of data from different sources into a digital, okay, transparent platform. Secondly, we want to promote greater visibility of carbon offsets. As mentioned, a lot of the activities that I am doing right now, personally, is not being shown anywhere. So I hope to be able to, start seeing my own offsets showing up transparently so that I can be assured, that my credit or my actions have contributed to the project. This is also very aligned, okay, with a potential Vera initiative that they've been announcing, okay, about allowing or supporting immobilization and fractionalization. Yeah, so while they are still figuring out or they are still building a technology for this, we are able to first, deliver first, okay, and hopefully it will still all come back together as a connection with them. all right? And ultimately, we think that this will enhance inclusivity for everyone, right? So we think that sustainability, I started by saying that we all need to take action, right? Okay, we are, handing out, sustainable goodie bags. And besides that, I still remember what John mentioned earlier, where we are losing 30 football fields every minute. That is mind-boggling. Yep, okay, that's mind-boggling. And in Singapore, I think we are gone in a matter of hours at the pace. Yeah, so I think we need to be able to recognize the fact that it's not just going to be entities or companies, performing these activities. It does need to be starting from the ground up. Yep. So I think that's where we are able to, try to promote this inclusivity for all size players, be it your SME or your individual, where we could drive society changes. Okay. So of course we are not alone. So we would love to collaborate. The fact that we have so many different guest partners today, I think it's because we like to collaborate, right? So we have a lot of support from the MAS under Project Greenprint. We are already covering multiple industry sectors. We have a growing list of use cases, right? Yesterday you heard 4 use cases. Today we have 5 use cases, whereby it includes green financial portfolio monitoring, supplier sustainability monitoring, sustainability financial products, and what I just mentioned, end-to-end carbon credits. Right, we have, very good partnerships from financial institutions, and non-FI, the largest ones that you know, And so we see that we're not alone. We really want to be able to partner with everyone, And also our team, we are working hard on this, right? So you see so many of them, give them a high five. Yep. So many of them are, standing behind. You will notice one trend. They are mostly younger than me. Yeah, and basically, work hard day and night, and we are very committed to our vision and mission, right? But of course, we can't do anything by ourselves. We believe that this is going to be a collective effort, right? And also, before I end, I just like to remind everyone that, after this, there's still going to be a few other sessions, whereby we're showing you cases in, other use cases in carbon credits and buildings. We are going to talk more about, agriculture use cases later. There's going to be supplier sustainability monitoring and also a use case about textile and fashion. So I think there's a lot of things or a lot of different ways, that all of these sectors could be supported, with the use of technology, collaboration, and of course, ecosystem. Yeah. So of course, with this, I believe that with a strong ecosystem, we could definitely, reach our goals together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ben, for that exciting update and giving a shout out to our hard work. And anyway, I'm sure that everyone is looking forward to the eventual review of this mysterious global e-commerce brand that you've mentioned. Maybe some of you might have already guessed it. But anyway, do keep a lookout for our press release, which will come out in the next few days. Moving on, I would like to now invite Mr. Ted Chen, co-founder and CEO of Evercomm Singapore, to speak about how Evercomm's platform and ESGpedia come together to provide better disclosures and monitoring of hotels. Following that, there will be a special announcement by Evercomm and Boho Veritas by Mr. Eng Yu Yo, Director at Boho Veritas. I would like to now invite Mr. Chen on stage, please.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ted. I'm the co-founder of Evercomm, and we are in the sustainability spaces for the past almost 7 years, always focusing on data. It's good that finally people really care about the accuracy of the data being disclosed. I remember when I first started it, sustainability is more like a CSR kind of thing. People are not really focusing much on it, and now the trend has really shifted. So, this is not my latest deck, but it's okay. So we have been around since 2013, as I mentioned earlier. When we first started it, we were always focusing on the heavy industry, right? So you see semicon, data center, and all these, because they're the one that really cares about reducing their emission, mainly from a cost standpoint. But as you can see from 2019, 2020, there's a big shift when it comes to even commercial buildings and all these. People really start to care about sustainability. Even during COVID, we onboarded more than 100 plus SMEs because they're being pressured by their customers and so on. And also if they want to unlock green financing and so on, refinancing and so on, they really need this kind of data. So this is really where we see a big change over the years. And for us in Singapore, Singapore is quite a unique case. Usually in Singapore, we see most of the cases are still in the property spaces, building spaces. But when we expand our services overseas, we see majority of our clients are really from manufacturing and so on, more of the heavy industry. So earlier when Ben talked about carbon credits, we do see that there's a lot of opportunity to generate efficiency-based carbon credits for a lot of these manufacturing-based companies overseas. And that's where later on where our partnership with Veritas is really about how to help them manage their net zero process, at the same time also creating efficiency-based carbon credits which they can use later on, all through our digital processes and collaboration with ESGpedia. So this is just an example of how overseas market really looks like. When we go overseas, really majority of the cases that we see there are factory-based. So we're working with, for example, in Taiwan, we're working with one city, which they already have 20,000 factories there. All of them needs to go green. The government really are struggling with what to do with all these manufacturers, right? So you can imagine that if we can go there, help them quickly digitize this information, store this information onto ESGpedia and be able to unlock all the additional services, whether from green financing and so on, so that we can help these companies to expedite their green journey. This is really what we're going for, because when we are in countries like Taiwan, Thailand, and also a lot of the neighboring countries, the ecosystem is really not as complete. It's really still in silos. So this is where ESGpedia can really serve as a good place for us to kickstart that journey. And for Thailand, recently we just went there under a G2G initiative, where again, it focuses on carbon credits. We do see that many of these companies, for this case, KT's, they're the third largest sugar producer. And in their process already, they started to implement, net zero initiatives because they need to process all those waste. So a lot of these things actually can generate carbon credits, which they're not fully taking advantage of. And that's where we're really bringing in our partners, BV, to see how can we help them quantify those, and of course tapping into the services from ESGpedia and Carbonpal as well. So the whole sustainability journey can be end-to-end. Right now, for some of these companies that we deal with, they have to engage 5 to 6 different companies just to be able to coordinate their sustainability initiative, which is quite tedious. If they are following multiple standards, the consulting cost can really go up, and we're talking about dealing with 10 or 11 different consultants just to manage their scale of business. So this is really the problem that we see for the rest of the industry. So this is really just a summary to see what is the issue. This is a SDG Asia Pacific report directly from United Nations. You can see in terms of climate actions, we are still trending towards the negative directions. And the biggest problem there you see is really the evidence of the data that we can get to be able to justify and really progress this further. So I think I'm really much standing behind the terms where if you cannot measure, you cannot improve, right? You can really see in Asia Pacific, we are really lagging behind when it comes to climate actions and sustainable consumptions and so on. Greenwashing is also one of the biggest challenges that we see. So for the ESG assurance, right? So for Evercomm, we provide 2 particular services, ESG Map and ESG Ops. And this is where we see how the industry are really asking for. When people talk about sustainability, usually you see these different 4 stakeholders. And the problem is that they all want different things, which makes sustainability a bit more troublesome for companies to manage, right? You have customers who wants to know whether, one, minimally, are you a green vendors or supplier, and some of the customers are now asking them, I also need to know what is the emission for the product that I'm buying, right? So these are very difficult questions for some of these manufacturers to answer, especially when they have hundreds of products and so on, being a manufacturing company. Financial institutions, slightly, they need financial related data, and at the moment, they just want to see that the companies are progressing towards lowering their carbon emissions. So the data is not as stringent sometimes as the customers. You have investor and board member. If you're listed companies, then you need to follow some of these standards out there, which can be quite complicated for them as well. And finally, you have the governments are pushing down mandates for different sectors. And different sectors usually have different compliance requirements as well. And that's why if you can imagine some of the conglomerates that we work with, they dabble into manufacturing, they dabble into properties, they dabble into agriculture and so on. And all these are all different when it comes to meeting with the government mandate, right? So this is really the challenges that we face. So for ESG Map, what we help them to do is, these are usually organization level data, your procurement data, your bills and so on. We quickly help them to aggregate. But the additional things that we do is, depending on which services you use, If there's actually an emission reductions, we will generate something called the emission reduction certificate for every activity proven that there's an emission reductions. If you're using ESG map, which means most of your data are self-upload, and in that cases, we need a digital verification process before we can generate that certificate. And this is where we have auditors, we have testing companies that can log in through that portal to help really verify that. Once that is verified, we can generate the emission cert. When it comes to ESG ops, it's slightly different. We directly pull data from these company systems. They have their manufacturing system, building system, EMS, BMS, and so on. So because we pull data directly from the systems, we can directly validate and we can directly generate the cert on the spot. And the way that we calculate the emission reductions is also being pre-assured, following the GHG protocol and so on. So you can imagine every single activity that is there, it's automatically being digitized and tracked. And again, the cert can also be converted into carbon credits depending on the use cases and so on. So this is where the two products that we are rolling out, really trying to simplify the whole emission reduction tracking and so on. This is just a first example I have for the property spaces. This is a case in Singapore. You can imagine most of these properties, they are really investing into sustainability. But the problem is they have different brands. They're putting a lot of money, but all these information right now are in silos. And this year, when we go around, most of the companies that we talk to in these regions, they're still trying to figure out where is their baseline emissions, right? So all these are just something that they're getting started. And how many standards they have to deal with, this is another problem that they're not really too sure of, right? So all this information is something that we're trying to simply help them on board with ESG map first and committing the data directly to ESGpedia so that you can really have the transparency and so on. This is how everyone manages their data right now. Just lots and lots and lots of Excel and following lots and lots and lots of template. So far, all the big companies, either in properties or in manufacturing, this is really their headache. And their sustainability team often told us that all these Excel flying across different email chain is really the headache. So when we talk about greenwashing, one thing that we learn is sometimes it's not people are intentionally trying to greenwash. It's just that when you have so many operators filling all these Excel sheets and so on, there are bound to be mistakes somewhere. And the most common mistake we see is that when people populating these files, they're not aware of the units. Suddenly you're seeing people adding kilowatt, a kilogram to ton, and just suddenly add together, and then voila, there's your emission, right? So these are all the things that we really see from the ground, and that's where we're trying to address and commit these data to ESGpedia, so the transparency is there, and then you can use that further to spin off different green applications as well. ESG Map, ESG Ops, and ESG Connect. ESG Connect is where we use to connect to ESGpedia so that other third parties can come in also to verify these data. Just to summarize again, for ESG Map, because it is self-upload data, because these are procurement info, so we need third party to come in to verify that before we generate the emission reduction certificate. But for ESG Ops, because we're pulling data directly from the sources of these systems, so we can verify directly, and there's an emission reduction, we can directly generate the certificate. And through our partnership with partners like Veritas, some of these emission reductions then can be converted into carbon credits. And that's how we're committing these data into ESGpedia and potentially ESG Power as well. This is just a quick glance of what ESG map looks like. With self-uploaded data, you can really see exactly where's your emission status, and every activities you have done, you get to see that on the monthly basis. If you further connect your system with us through ESG Ops, you can see from the data sources, we're directly pulling data from their system. So if they want to track their Scope 1 emission, if they have a lot of fleets in part of their operations, we are already pulling data from their fleet management system so we can track the emission Scope 1 directly from the vehicle and so on. So the whole process become automated. And if they adopt EVs and so on, then the emission reductions or emission avoidance can also be, the certificate will also be automatically generated, right? So this is how we simplify the whole tracking for them. And again, mentioned, there's a lot of standards. So with all the data that we have, we quickly help them to see which of the standards of their choices are and how compliant they are to those standards. Are they answering those questions and so on? So this is really how we bring the one-shot approach to them. So collecting data, depending on different standards, we help collect those data as well. And this is the most important part. We can directly integrate with their existing operations, especially that we see many of the factories and even hotels, building management system and so on. And all these brands that you see is something that we have already successfully be able to extract data from them, right? So again, the whole transparency is there. And more and more, the bigger organization, they also don't want to be able to, they also don't want to consolidate all these data manually on a monthly basis. So many of them actually are moving towards integration with these companies as well, right? So that with these data, they can even break down to, based on their targets, which are the section the emission is really going up that they need to look into, right? So these are some of the things that we are able to provide for them. This is where we talk about the third-party verification platform. If they're uploading records, again, even though our calculation of emissions is pre-assured following GHG protocol and so on, but if users are uploading wrong informations or garbage informations, everything will be garbage as well. So we do have a verification platform where if they want to generate certificate based on their self-uploaded evidence information, these evidence needs to be verified by a third party in order for us to generate the certificate so that they can move forward with the disclosure and so on. So this is some of the additional functions that we have built to help simplify. And in this region, we see a lot of the auditors and consultants really want these features as well, because they have a surge of people wants to engage them for ESG services. And the manual auditing process of going through all those documents is actually quite tedious for them as well. So we're also partnering with the auditors to see how we can use this to help simplify their sustainability services for some of these clients that we engage with. This is the final emission reduction cert that we're talking about. Every single cert generated, automatically we will put on the cert following the GHG protocol standards. And some of these certs can be used for green financing. We have already worked with OCBC UOB through ESGpedia. And some of the cert can also be converted to carbon credits using our partnership with Veritas, which later on they will share a bit more about how we're doing that. And you can see from here, these are the cert that we are committed directly to ESGpedia to help the company to further facilitate other green applications that they may want. So this is really the end-to-end approach that we're bringing trust into the data, and we're bringing quality data so that it's easier to facilitate all these green applications and so on. So this is the last case study you can see. This is just one of the companies that we have on board. Their entire process is really comes to waste to management and also reducing the emission and so on from their whole entire end-to-end supply chain. You can imagine there's a lot of process involved and a lot of opportunity to generate emission reduction and carbon credits as well. Right now, to track through all these is all manual consulting, all done by the auditors and so on. So we're now digitally helping them to connect the system, digitally help them to upload this information so the verification can be a lot more simplified. This is something that our partners will share more about how we're going through that process. And we do see that these are the clients that we see are the opportunity of generating efficiency-based carbon credits. Many of them are already doing things. It's just that they don't know how to quantify, they don't know how to track, and this is where we can really step into to help them on their emission reduction journey. And this is an example of how technology are directly integrated from their system so we can see. So if we get in data from them, we can also show them that, hey, by the way, the technology they are using, based on the data, there's still a lot of saving opportunity. Would you like to take on green financing to help upgrading this part? So not only you can reduce your emissions, you can also be able to upgrade and save energy from your daily operation. So this is really where data becomes very important, the moment that we can pull data from them, from their system. So with that, thank you. And I'll get my partners to come up, share more about the carbon credits part. Thank you.
Hi, Eng Yu from Bureau Veritas, Director for BV Rise in Sustainability and Energy Transition in Asia. I'd like to thank STACS for their warm hospitality in having us here today, and also our fine audience for sharing with me your next few minutes of attention. At Bureau Veritas, our mission is to shape a world of trust. Incorporated since 1828, we operated in a wide range of sectors such as building and infrastructure, power and utilities, renewables, marine and offshore, agri-food, industrial and consumer products. We have presence in 140 countries with 1,600 locations, and we have a strong team made out of more than 80,000 professionals. BV is a business-to-business to society company that provides testing, inspection, certification, and technical services by assisting our clients to ensure that their assets systems and products are safe, reliable, and sustainable, we are contributing positively to our society. As a group, we are committed in our ESG journey, and we are humbled to receive recognition by many international rating agencies. BV Rise is a center of excellence supported by EDB Singapore, and we advise clients in Asia on their journey towards net zero, sustainability, and energy transition. In carbon, we look at the computation of carbon footprint, life cycle assessments for products and services, and verification of carbon credit projects. In sustainability, we look at clients' ESG strategy and help them with gap analysis, utilizing platforms and tools to assess and measure ESG maturity level. We also provide independent assurance of sustainability reports, which has become the norm in listed companies today. For energy transition projects in the region, we act as owners engineers in renewables, such as solar, wind, hydropower, ESS, green hydrogen and biofuels, including the up-and-coming nuclear energy. We also advise on charging networks on the deployment and regular inspections. Also on the energy efficiency assessment for buildings and key assets. To better illustrate what we do, we have handpicked a few case studies for your reference. BV is accredited carbon credits verifier for Verra, Gold Standard, and CTM. For this upcoming project for KTIS, the third largest sugar plantation and producer in Asia, we have partnered with Evercomm to authenticate KTIS carbon credits for their circular economy projects on Evercomm's platform. An MOU was signed between KTIS, Evercomm, and BV during the recent Singapore and Thailand ministerial meeting in Bangkok. In this project, BV will advise on the process for carbon credit application, verification of carbon credits, and provide assurance support. In the area of sustainability, we are conducting amazing work for some of the big names in the world. For this client in the theme park and entertainment sector, they are concerned about their suppliers' environmental footprint, how the suppliers' footprint will impact their ESG commitments. Capitalizing on BV's sustainability expertise and presence in 140 countries, we conduct ESG maturity assessment with our solution Clarity on their 1,200 global suppliers. In the domain of energy transition, BV is very active in supporting renewable power plant projects with our owners engineer services across the value chain. From design review and construction of new systems to operations and optimization of existing assets. To date, we have supported more than 3,000 renewable power plant projects in over 50 countries. One of our project highlights is this iconic green hydrogen project for our client Sinopec, which is the first and by far the largest in China, and likely also the largest around the world. BV was involved right from the beginning, reviewing the engineering designs to managing the entire project to ensure that the assets are safe and built to last. We have been in discussion with Evercomm on several projects since August. Through our regular interactions, we discovered that both companies' service offerings complement each other, and by leveraging on each other's strengths, we are able to deliver an end-to-end solution for our key clients. In October last month, I see a photo here, we formalized our partnership in an MOU signing ceremony led by Mr. Vincent Baudieu, Senior Vice President for BV Southeast Asia and Pacific, and Mr. Chen, Evercomm CEO. BV and Evercomm share a common ethos in shaping a world of trust. In our partnership, we have identified the trend of increasing needs for credible sustainability reporting and verified carbon credit projects. Leveraging on BV's global presence and expertise in accredited verifications and Evercomm's strong expertise in developing AI-driven ESG solutions to accelerate climate actions, both companies will collaborate in the areas of verified digital ESG assurance on emission reduction certificates, carbon credits, and carbon footprint. Through this partnership, we are confident that our clients can ensure transparency accountability, and compliance with international standards in their sustainability reporting and carbon-related projects. Such credibility also create a win-win benefit for both our clients and their stakeholders during the evaluation process of trade and investments. Building on our partnership with Evercomm, BV looks forward to create more win-win opportunities with the larger fintech ecosystem. Thank you for your kind attention, and I wish us a fruitful event ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chen, for taking us through the Evercomm platform and ESGpedia. And thank you, Mr. Yo, for that special collaboration announcement. It's truly heartening to see collaborations happening across different expertise areas and industries. And I think this is crucial for dealing with today's challenges in sustainability, where most, if not all, the issues require perspectives from different disciplines. And with that, we've come to the end of the first half of today, and we'll be taking a short 15 minutes break. Please be back and seated by 3:25 p.m. as we will start the next showcase promptly at 3:25 p.m. And feel free to help yourself to the drinks and as well as the washrooms outside of this room. Thank you, everyone, and see you again in 15 minutes' time.
We are in the race of our lives to reverse climate change. 8 billion people, one planet. Together, we are racing towards a greener and brighter future. A future we can achieve with sustainable finance. As Asia's leading ESG fintech, STACS propels you forward on your sustainability journey with ESGpedia, a one-stop registry of holistic ESG certifications and data, covering a wide variety of sectors and global verified sources, with the necessary fintech tools to enable effective ESG finance. And we aren't alone. Already, our rapidly expanding ecosystem has brought together companies with the same desire for sustainability. Together, we can bring forward a greener future of finance. Together, we can enhance trust in sustainable financing to safeguard our planet. As the world races towards net zero, join us to achieve your ESG goals and build a greener planet we are proud to call home.
Sustainability is at the heart of corporate strategy, both in the way Citi conducts its business and the client initiatives that we support.
Our sustainable solutions, from sustainable supply chain finance through to trade loans and agency solutions, are proven and in live operation, meeting our clients' sustainability ambitions. Our partnership with STACS and MAS is expected to amplify sustainable finance by leveraging standardized ESG data available through the ESG Registry.
One of the biggest challenges globally to accomplish this is the lack of high-quality ESG data, which is needed, for instance, to take well-informed decisions on capital allocations or measure impact. This is precisely where the MAS Greenprint project kicks in, as it tackles this ESG data challenge head-on by piloting digital platforms that harness innovation and technology.
There are currently plans to take this initiative further by storing information collected on a central data depository called Project Greenprint. This marks a step in the right direction to drive greater efficiencies in data collection, accessibility, and quality, factors that are key to enabling better decision-making.
We have also forged industry partnerships on platforms with similar goals, such as the Greenprint ESG Registry, which will provide us with a single point of access on both ESG data and certifications across different sectors.
As a founding member of ESGTradex, contributing to Singapore's development of a secure digital supply chain ecosystem, Standard Chartered sustainable finance framework and innovation expertise will strongly support Project Greenprint's goals of leveraging quality data and promote green finance.
Finance is an inherently mathematical and quantitative field, while sustainability was until recently mostly driven by ethical and qualitative value. Data is the bridge bringing both together, but today this bridge has several weak pillars: availability of data, quality, consistency, transparency, and so on. By creating a single registry fed by numerous sources, Project Greenprint is addressing directly these challenges.
As a leader in sustainable finance, we believe that access to verifiable and comparable ESG data is fundamental to grow the sustainable finance market in an incredible manner. Project Greenprint is a great initiative as it provides connectivity of platforms that enhance the credibility of ESG data.
Project Greenprint is an important platform to the ESG cause as it blends sustainability with technology and facilitate the automation of the ESG data value chain.
We are collaborating with a diverse range of stakeholders globally to support the transition to a more sustainable economy, while stressing accountability and transparency through our Carbon Compass methodology and regular reporting on our progress.
Such use of technology under Project Greenprint will enhance data availability, quality, and comparability. Companies can then do more and communicate more clearly their ESG impact.
Welcome back, everyone. We will now commence the second half of today with Mr. Matthew Kasdin, Director, Senior Counsel, and Head of Sustainability at Maxeon Solar Technologies. He will be giving us an introduction to Maxeon, and he will also be speaking about ESGpedia's application in Maxeon's supplier sustainability monitoring. Mr. Kasdin, please.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to begin today's presentation with a short film, so you can watch and learn a bit about Maxeon, and then I'll go through our supply chain.
How do you build a better tomorrow when the world is constantly changing today? You have to start a little sooner, work a little harder, climb a little higher. You have to care more and dare more. You have to stand behind your values and stay ahead of the curve. So when the future gets here, you're already there. This spirit of constant improvement has made us the world-renowned leader in solar innovation and inspired us to become who we are today. Maxeon Solar Technologies. Thriving together to lead the fight against climate change, with SunPower solar products ready for any challenge. Record-setting efficiency, proven reliability, from panels as clean as the energy they produce, plus a vast partner network that brings local expertise and products to more than 100 countries around the globe. It's the result of pushing the boundaries of innovation for more than 35 years. From the edge of outer space to countless rooftops below, we know that holding our products and ourselves to a higher standard raises the bar for the entire solar industry and gives customers everywhere the power to make a positive impact on our world. Maxeon Solar Technologies, powering positive change.
Okay, well, there is an overview of our company from the corporate department. So Maxeon Solar Technologies originally came out of a company called SunPower Corporation, based in San Jose, actually came out of Stanford University, started in 1985, but back in 2010, it was decided there should be two separate companies. And so they spun off the operations of the manufacturing, research, and sales in more than 100 countries to Singapore. So I've actually been in Singapore for about 15 years. Maxeon's been in Singapore for 2. So now we've got 80 people here, 2 of whom are here with me today. You can look at our global manufacturing footprint. Our best technology is manufactured in Philippines and Malaysia. We do have a joint venture in China. We've got manufacturing also, some in France, although that's going down, as well as in Mexico. So you can look at that footprint all around the world, and you can imagine what our supply chain looks like. We have, 1,700 suppliers from 30, 40 countries, very complex supply chain. We are both a consumer, so we have all the suppliers. We're also a supplier to our customers. So we go through the whole supply chain monitoring. We do have our sustainability framework that we put in place when we became an independent company 2 years ago. That we actually worked with PwC on. So we've got our 14 material topics in the areas of E, S, and G, focusing, I guess for this audience, a lot on the energy and emissions, water management, waste. How do we actually keep track of all of this? We've met all our sustainability commitments to the world, and now we need to figure out how we're going to monitor that. We do have our long-term targets, which is what we need to be doing on our supplier side, which is making sure that we're monitoring all of our suppliers towards these targets. In the product innovation space, we have our cradle-to-cradle, carbon positivity. Then on the environmental side, we have a lot of stuff at energy intensity, emission intensity, all these great subjects you've heard these people speaking about today. We do have a number of certifications, which is something that the platform showcases. We have MSCI rating. We were rated A, thanks to the great sustainability report that we put together. We have the NSF Declare Cradle to Cradle certified, as well as PV Magazine. We won their award for Most Sustainable Company. And we do have the most efficient panels in the world. Originally designed in California, now we have a huge amount of research and development here in Singapore. We do a collaboration with the National University of Singapore, their Solar Energy Research Institute of Singapore. And you can see we've just won one record after another for the most efficient solar panels you can buy on the market. Recently, we have the biggest, best residential panel, and we're developing the next technology from our headquarters here in Singapore. Here's a case study, which is Aptera. It's an auto company from California, and you can see they're putting our solar on the cars. You can just leave your car outside, get it all charged up, and go up to 40 miles per day just by leaving it outside. And now what we've been doing, just earlier this year, we launched the Beyond the Panel, which is beyond just us having the solar, but the whole integrated system where we have the AC module, storage, and the services. So that's a little bit about our company. Obviously, we're in the renewable space. It's exciting to be in the renewable space. I think for a long time, we were able to just rest in our laurels and the fact that we were seen to be a company that investors wanted to invest in just because of the industry we're in. But everything in the industry is becoming a lot more rigorous in terms of the way that people are evaluating companies. So we have to be a lot more rigorous. Now, we do have a Valdo from our supply chain team here. Historically, when we evaluated our suppliers, what we looked at was essentially just, are they the cheapest? Are they the best quality? Those are the factors, and then we go in and look at those factors and make the decision. For the ongoing monitoring of our supply chain, what we would do is essentially just make sure that they're following our code of conduct. So we put in place a very robust contract, very robust code of conduct, have supplier sustainability guidelines. It's a lot of very negative stuff. Don't do this, don't do that. Don't be corrupt. Don't bribe people under the FCPA. All this, don't do this, don't do that. And I actually do a training for all of our suppliers every year, make sure that they attend the training, but very much it's mommy, daddy, don't do this. What we wanted to do as a company, however, is look into how we can be more positive in our supply chain selection. Rather than just choosing our suppliers on the fact that they don't do this and they don't do that, that they comply with the laws, are they the best supplier? Do they have the best practices? And so we were looking for a solution for that, to have that. Part of this was frankly driven by our customers. What I'm seeing from our customers is they're asking me a lot more about my supply chain practices, what's in my supply chain. So it's very much demand driven. And this was a need that we were seeing coming from our customers. So that's when I was lucky enough to sit next to STACS at an organization, an event put together by PwC. I sat next to Sharon, who's here, and I said, wow, the STACS initiative, that could be super useful for us because we're looking for a way to be take into account the more positive factors in what we look for in our supply chain. So, the business challenge. The challenge was supply chain monitoring, because what we want to do is have a better control over who we choose as suppliers and monitoring them to make sure that they're the best suppliers that we could have for the planet. And the problem was that, up until now, there wasn't any centralized database to figure out where all the information was, and there was an absence of a comparability tool. So we weren't really doing any of this, and that's why we're so excited to talk to Text and see their tool. So the ESGpedia solution, what it does, it aggregates the disparate data sets to provide a one-stop registry, and it provides customized monitoring of the ESG data. And so the outcome is a lot more organized, easy access to all this ESG data, customization and automation, timely engagement, and a way to showcase the stakeholder engagement. So here you can see some slides with the actual interface that we have with ESGpedia. This is the portfolio monitoring. So you can see all our different suppliers there. We can plug them into the system, the name of the suppliers. All the information pops up. It does the assessment and comparison, flags up changes in ESG performance over time, and we're able to do some customization. So you have the big tool with all the different ones listed. Then you can do a deeper dive here. So that is very much of a great solution to this problem we were having of figuring out how to look and see what suppliers have, what certifications they have, what carbon disclosure they have from the CDB project. And we can kind of gather that information, compare them, and monitor them over time. It's also, frankly, very interesting from us from a finance perspective. Because we are a company that is sustainable, this gives us an opportunity to showcase everything that we're doing for all of our potential investors, for our customers. People can find all that information. They go on the website, they look Maxeon Solar Technologies, they can see all the ESG data, they can see the engagement, and they can find all of our information there. So this pilot that we just completed with STACS, definitely a very positive pilot. very happy that we were able to be able to meet STACS, to work with them, to develop them. I think it's been a great tool for us, one that will be very useful for us in our supplier selection going forward. These are some of the benefits here. By monitoring all this, we can have reduced material and waste expenses, reduced energy potentially, can help us with compliance, help our customers. As I mentioned, our customers are interested in this information. We can definitely pass this information on. It'll be very interesting to them that we have it. Our employees, definitely ESG is huge to our employee, finding employees and retaining them. It'll be very important for that. And that should lead to greater quality and services. So thank you very much, and appreciate the partnership with STACS.
Thank you, Mr. Kasdin, for taking us through the application of ESGpedia in supplier sustainability monitoring. And it's exciting to see how Maxeon is future-proofing solar energy by being forward-looking in a sustainability-focused direction. Next, I would like to invite Mr. Gerald Tan, CEO at Agridence, to speak about how Agridence and ESGpedia come together to provide greater traceability and sustainability data to rubber sector financing use cases. Mr. Tan, please.
Hello. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gerald. I'm the CEO of Agridence. Recently, we rebranded. Previously, some of you may know us as Heavier Connect. There's some background story to that. It's because basically we raised our new Series A, new investors, new expectations. We changed our name from Heavier Connect. Heavier is very rubber focused to agri because we're expanding into other commodities, right? Okay, so who are we? Right, we're a Singapore-based software company. Basically, we develop tools to collect supply chain data. Right now, we're focusing in the natural rubber space, but we're moving into other agri-commodities. So what's our vision? Essentially, we want to tag all commodity upstream data to procurement. Right? Everything needs to be tagged to a procurement. Right? So it has to be sustainable procurement, not just sustainability team versus a procurement team, right? You have to tag everything to a transaction. That is basically our vision, and I'll explain to you why we think that's so. All right, so before we start, what is natural rubber, right? Not every one of you can understand what is natural rubber. So what's the natural rubber market? It's 14 million tons globally, right? And that translates loosely to 10 million farmers or 10 million smallholders. So the potential for impact in this industry is tremendous for human lives, right? And there's no mechanization. It's impossible for you to scale up a human hand. You need a hand to go to the tree and to tap, right? So it's a very human story in natural rubber. And whereas rubber is everywhere, every day in your everyday life, right? How do you get here? You use cars. How do you walk your shoes? You've got natural rubber in your shoes, the soles of your shoes, right? So, but we don't often think about this, right? We will focus a lot on the tire manufacturers because, as we can see, more than 65% of the global supply goes to basically goes into tires. Okay, so we built our company around the supply chain pain points. Before I go into this, I'll share a little bit of my background. So I came from the natural rubber industry. I came from a family business. I was fourth generation. Basically, I ran a factory processing rubber and also a trading company. So I've dealt with smallholders, I ran the factory, I've ran the trading office. So basically, I have end-to-end experience and I understand firsthand all the different pain points. And when I was running that factory, I was thinking, why isn't there a platform to help make everything more efficient? Because it's a very old industry and a lot of manual processes, very ripe for digitalization. So let's go. I mean, some pain points definitely for smallholder farmers is, well, I talk about sustainability, right? It's not just the poor yields, but also deforestation. And there is an up and down in terms of prices. So when prices go up, they deforest and basically replant natural rubber. But it takes 7 years for rubber trees to be productive, right? So it's a very unsustainable way of manufacturing, okay? What we need to do is we need to look after them. And also in terms of volatility, is super volatile. Just to give you an example, in 2011, 1 kg of natural rubber cost $5.50 per kg. Today is $1.10. Now you just imagine your income in 2011 is 5,500 a month, and now it's 1,001 a month. But essentially on your day-to-day, you're doing the same thing over and over again. But now your income is basically 20%, right? It totally doesn't make sense, okay? Now in terms of the processes, they're super inefficient. It is highly manual, right? And I know because when I went into the factory, I was like, every single thing is manual, paper-based. You're lucky if you get Excel, right? So how do you even think about data? You know, you've heard the word data all the time, right? So how do you transit this industry to a sustainable industry? You need transparency, you need data. It's impossible without good management systems. Now, in terms of the tire makers, okay, you think about the tire makers, the big ones, Michelin, Bridgestone, Goodyear, these are the big brands. They're all on our platform. And who do they supply to? They supply to Europe, supply to America. And the Supply Chain Act definitely 100% has big impact on the natural rubber industry. Right? So natural rubber is a key resource that is being included in the EU supply chain law, meaning companies have to understand the supply chain all the way down to the polygon. Right? So traceability is absolutely key in this industry. So now, these are some of our users. You know, we're very blessed to be corporate backed. So we have shareholders like SGX and DBS, right? And recently, we also have 2 new VCs that have joined us. So if you look at our users, we have basically all the top names, right? And it is very concentrated in terms of the volumes. So if you look at, for example, Michelin, Bridgestone, and Goodyear, these are the big 3. Right? They consume about 10% or 15% of the global natural rubber supply, 3 companies. Right? So it's very concentrated. And you will see our strategy, why we focus on a trading platform between the processors and the tire makers. So let's begin with the supply chain, okay? And the different types of products that we have developed. So for the millions of smallholders, we have done high quality videos for them. Educational videos. I'll run through quickly, then I'll go in detail later. And then we have a traceability application between the farmers and the agents all the way to the factory. And within the processing factory, as I mentioned earlier, we have a factory management system. And then this is I would say our marquee product, which is the trading platform between processors and tire companies. And tire companies can then, you know, basically collect all the information of the upstream supply chain and present this to their customers, which would be the automotive companies and the final consumers. Now, why is this a supply chain funnel? Because we are concentrating in the middle, whereby if you look at, this is a huge industry whereby it's very concentrated. Again, if we have the top 200 processors and top 100 tire makers, you are way more than 50% of the entire global market, right? So we stand a good chance in natural rubber. It's a relatively small industry, but we can prove the concept of entire supply chain transparency. So a little bit of detail. So we have partner, we also love partners. So we partner with SNV. They are an NGO, a Dutch NGO in Indonesia. They have very high quality educational materials. What we do is we took that and then we digitized it. At this moment in time, we put it on YouTube, free for viewing, English, Indonesian, and Thai languages, right? Which is basically the market. And then what we want to do later is we can put this into an application for them, and then we can educate them like an ed tech kind of play. And then if you answer certain questions, you can prove that you have been well trained. We can then see track basically you have learned and improved your processes, and we can measure it. Now next, this is another partnership that we have with WWF. This is in palm oil, right? So as I said earlier, we were in rubber, and this is palm oil. So this is our first step into diversifying into palm oil. WWF looked at the world of traceability applications, and they wanted to build an application themselves, and because there are some features that were missing, they put out RFP, and then Agridence, we basically submitted an RFP and we won that project. It took us 9 months to win that project. But we're the official partner. We have developed this application. It is live and being used in Pekanbaru, Indonesia, Sumatra. So basically this proves the concept right now that suppliers or the farmers can actually deal directly with the mills, right? And we also have this in a feature phone format, not just the smartphone, right? Feature phone. Traceability in and of itself, it is not very useful, right? You need to overlay a risk assessment tool with it, and that's where we're proven, right? So we have traceability data. We put a risk assessment tool that's provided by WWF today, and then we have a dashboard to show you your risk factors. This is where we're also open for partnerships, because what we have developed is we develop tools to acquire data, and then we can then work with different frameworks and different kind of risk assessment tools, and then we can put that on our platform. Now, again, this is the factory data center. So we created a management system for the factory. No longer need paper, you don't even need Excel. We created a very simple app for you to walk around the factory and key in the valuable data. So focus would be on water consumption and electricity consumption. These directly impact your GHG emissions. So we also have calculators in there. We basically use the true cost, S&P true cost calculator, whereby we know your electricity consumption, and then we can calculate your scope 1, 2, and 3. Right, so this is another digital product that we have for the factory. Now, this is the trading platform. This is very key, because what it does is it basically collects all the supply chain information, and then when you trade, it's not just the physical product, but it's data-backed product. You have sustainability and traceability information that's tagged to the physical product, and then when you purchase it, you can make an informed decision. So that we are trying to move towards, again, sustainable procurement. That's something that's very key to our heart. Right, so all this dashboard, everything is available basically on desktop and also on mobile. Now, ESGpedia. Naturally, we are the commodity-specific, natural rubber, palm oil. We will collect that data directly and provide that to ESGpedia. Right, so it makes it efficient for ESGpedia or STACS to basically work with us. We will work directly with the commodity-specific companies, aggregate the information, and provide that to STACS. So this is where Agridence, we play a part here, collect sustainability and traceability information, factory relevant information, right? Especially looking at electricity, NDPE, farmer training, traceability, all this information, we will collect that, and then we'll put it together with ESGpedia, and then obviously for them to be used by corporates and financial institutions, right? So this is something that is ongoing. I wouldn't say it's 100% there yet, but it's ongoing. So we'll show you a use case that we're targeting. Right, so this is putting everything together, right? Starting from the smallholder farmer, the factory, the buyer, and the FIs, okay? So this is how we envision things to flow. Okay, when you first start, you definitely need the smallholder to input all the data here. Okay, and then what happens is also there will be, in terms of the buyer, they will put in key NR natural rubber specifications. So for the specifications, we're thinking that it's not just your typical quality and your specifications of the rubber, but also sustainability information. So we want to create a way for the buyers to talk about, hey, look, I'm supplying to Europe. I'm supplying to US. You can then create bespoke specifications for your suppliers to provide data. Because for us, we are very practical. Right? We understand that you don't go from non-sustainable to sustainable overnight. It's impossible to create all this data, everything one shot. Right? So we take a stepwise approach. So a platform like this creates the ability for you to segregate the data quite clearly. Okay? So all this data is created by the farmers, and then will be put into the factory data center and then traded on the trading platform. Now you might ask, so what is it in it for the farmers to provide you this data? Right? So inside this application, we have created an incentive mechanism whereby depending on the value of the data that you provide, you get certain points. Right? And then we are developing an incentive mechanism for the farmers to basically use a platform, use this application. Okay? And then this data is obviously going to be pushed to STACS, and then it can be used for green financing by certain financial institutions. right? So putting it all together, right, the end game is definitely for green financing, right? So our end game is to be able to create this data platform for data to flow from upstream to downstream and for value from downstream to upstream, right? So ultimately, we want to give you proof that the data came from this source that's verifiable. And then also, if there's an incentive mechanism, if you're going to pay a premium, it must be clear and transparent with proof that it really goes to the smallholder or the farmer, rather than lining the middleman's pockets, right? So that is basically our end game. Yep. And with that, obviously, partnership is very important for us. And thank you very much, STACS, for having us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tan, for that fiery presentation and taking us through the Agridence and ESGpedia platform applications. Again, I think it's amazing how Agridence and its partners enable data traceability across the entire supply chain, and it will be a powerful enabler for different functions like value distribution, risk assessment, and rubber trading. And moving on, I would like to invite Ms. Carolyn Poon, Director of Sustainability at Singapore Fashion Council. Ms. Carolyn Poon will be outlining SFC's objectives in enabling members to perform ESG data disclosures, supply chain monitoring, and ESG financing in partnership with ESGpedia. Ms. Poon, please.
Very good afternoon to everyone. Once again, we want to thank Benjamin and the team for having us here today to be able to share, as a trade association, how are we empowering companies within our industry towards the green transition. And it seems that rebranding is in, so we have also just rebranded. So for those of us who met us earlier, like Yulin and Cynthia, we were previously known as Textile and Fashion Federation, and just as of last Wednesday, we've been rebranded as Singapore Fashion Council. Okay. So here's the interesting thing about the fashion industry. Now, not every one of us, may know that if you look at the right-hand side, this is just the top 13 top 13 fashion companies in the world, and they, at least about half of them are in Singapore, okay, with their regional HQ in Singapore. And out of the top 80 fashion companies, they aggregate to a market cap of $1 trillion US dollars. So this is a sizable industry. As what we say to all companies, to all countries, in fact, to all our neighbors as well, that everyone, as a consumer, we have the empowerment, the choice of empowerment with the clothes that we choose to buy, to wear. And as a company, that is also an area that we can, even if you're not in the fashion business, you can still, through your employee engagement, to get the employees to learn about sustainability through fashion. Now, on the left-hand side is actually the global emissions picture. Now, what is interesting here is that I'm sure many of us have read that fashion industry is one of the largest polluter in the world. It's about 10% of the global GHG emissions. Now, you will see that most of that is upstream. Now, the fashion industry, despite all the recycling efforts and all that, it is still slated to grow at about 5% CAGR per year. Now, what this means that, especially for those in the financial community, if you are assessing the risk of your portfolio, you will know that despite having the SBTi targets and all that for the companies, there will be an uphill task for them to maintain even the same set of sustainability targets with that growth. Okay, and also I think going back to the right-hand side, if you see across the brands, you will see that it is a mini picture of United Nations. You have US companies, you have European companies, you have Asian companies. So when you look at sustainability in the space of fashion, you're really looking across different regulations that are coming into play, and that's what makes, I guess, our world interesting. And I would say also to acknowledge Cynthia from PwC Singapore. She and the team are really integral to a sector report that we commissioned PwC Singapore to do in July this year. It was published and unveiled in July this year, that gave us a view of some of the levers of change that we can use and leverage to help drive some of these industry level initiatives. Now, then across the value chain, you will see here, it's a complicated value chain from raw materials to material processing to, dyeing your clothes and to assembling it and then to distributing it, likewise to retailing it and finally to post-consumption. Now, easily a piece of clothes, even you talk about simple t-shirt, right? It will at least have gone through 5 factories to come to you. Okay, it is how, and that's really just a simple piece without any accessories like buttons and zips and all that, okay, and threads and all that to go into sewing a piece of garment. So it is very complicated in terms of supply chain. As we saw earlier, there are a lot of multi-geographies involved as well. Now, then from a challenge perspective, we have kind of bundled into 3 boxes. Now, on the left-hand side, it's really about visibility, supply chain visibility. Over a long, complicated supply chain, it is, even for the largest corporates, it is a challenge for them to maintain the supply chain visibility. So now with ISSB coming with that announcement that they do want to include Scope 3 emissions, you can imagine that even for the largest corporates, this is going to be an increasing challenge, even with their massive amount of resources. I just had a conversation with one of the MNCs here yesterday, and they were saying that post-COVID, the challenge is not just, having and leveraging on the systems that they already have, but it's really rebuilding some of the factory level workers, communities that they have to become, to maintain, to become that responsible business. Because literally these communities are starting from scratch. And with climate change, with floods happening so often, as we hear and as we read about almost every day within Southeast Asia, for example, you see that that is really an increasing challenge. So you can expect costs to rise just to keep up to the same standard of sustainability reporting and visibility. Next off is traceability, and this is about product level understanding. Okay, now we have read news about big brands get into the wrong side of the law. That's really part of the reason is that the industry is going towards understanding what goes into the material of a product. Now, within the standard, the GRS standard, for example, that and that's a global recycled standard. Now, within GRS standard, you must have at least 20%. Recycled composition, recycled content to be able to claim that standard. But at the retailing end, that means as shop front, customer facing, you must have 50% content. Then you can do that labeling. So you can see that there's actually a lot of nuances that goes behind it. And I do agree with the previous speaker that a lot is happening globally in terms of corporate reporting frameworks. A lot is happening even within the textile regulations, fashion industry regulations, to harmonize many of these challenges that companies are operating under today. And we hope that perhaps in three years' time, there will be a much more harmonized set of standards to come. But I think this availability of just having the product level traceability is an opportunity, particularly for brands. And this opens up the whole area that when we said supply chain sustainability, is it only for the big boys? No. When you actually can have digitalization with a product or a partner like ESGpedia, you can now open the product level traceability even to the mid-tier companies. Now, of course, besides GHG emissions, we are also, as an industry, we're also big in terms of the water impact, the social impact as well. So these are, again, a whole suite of metrics that we need to look at when we bring the members towards the pathway of sustainability. So credit to the work by PwC Singapore. So these are essentially a summary of all the drivers that push the industry towards green transformation. They're both a set of external drivers as well as internal drivers for the companies to move ahead. I think suffice to know that there's a great motivation of the industry to change. So if you look at the industry, you look at the companies today, and a year later, you'll find that it's going to be a very different shape. So what is our role as an industry association in terms of catalyzing the sustainability practices? So first off, we do recognize that for the state of the industry here, for those companies, fashion companies that are actually here in Singapore, they are either largely suppliers or brands. And suppliers, they could be material suppliers as well. They are some form of supplying, whether it's finished product or materials. And for them, there's a huge administrative workload in terms of reporting to their brands. So take, for example, a garment manufacturer, right? They could be under, the Walmart system of reporting. They could be under the Amazon system, of climate reporting as well. Or they could be under their own brands, the big brands reporting structure. So there's a lot of burden. I think one of the speakers showed that the Excel spreadsheet is exactly what we hear from our members. And they do not see that each of these systems are overlapping in somewhat. They are actually distinct reporting structures that they have to adhere, otherwise they lose the deal. And so therefore, digitalization, having a common platform makes so much sense, because now you can say that using the digital platform, you can more easily pivot to the requirements of different, brands or different customers. Now then, for brands, typically they are, besides the global brands, as we spoke about, we're now able to open the opportunity for some of the mid-tier brands as well. Those who have gone, out of Singapore, like Love Bonito, Benjamin Barker and the likes. So these are mid-tier brands which, really help them at that scale to be able to prove their competitive edge, because they are now able to showcase their certifications and allow them to create that market access, to allow them to, for their overseas customers to be able to see and verify that they are able to qualify for the regulations within that country. So through that and through our ecosystem of partners, STACS, we also have two initial partners from the banking industry, DBS Bank and HSBC Bank, as a start. And also we are, given the nature of the industry, also wrapping it around the B Corp and the B Lab certification, which is heavy on GRI. And also on social impact, to allow companies to be purpose-led and business as a force for good. So through these ecosystem of partners, what we're really trying to do is that we wrap it around a framework, we provide some visibility, and that is like the goalpost for the members to get towards. So it makes the entire industry much more efficient in that way. And through that, we drive uptake of sustainability practices, and also through the reporting on that digital platform, we are now able to increase that transparency. And of course, alongside with that is that role of, we see the boxes at the bottom, is that role of educating the industry, educating the public at large as well. And conversely, we also see that as an opportunity to share the domain knowledge with the financial industry. So it's like a bit of exchange of understanding in a win-win way. Okay, so through the ESGpedia, we have been able to incorporate some of these different forms of data to be part of the ESGpedia. And we are also, we have through B Corp list of assessment questions, we're able to, do some form of risk assessment in terms of where they are, how they map to the SDGs and all that. Okay. And the synergies with ESGpedia is really, we are galvanizing the industry, moving them towards the framework of the certifications. So this is like the ambition, right, to drive the industry towards, so that each of the members, they do not have to do their whole set of homework to understand which are the standards that are important for the industry. And through that, we are moving them closer, one step closer to the financial industry, and that when the time comes where they do need that, to work with the financial industry, or even to the VCs for innovations and so on and so forth, they are at least one step closer to prove their capabilities. Okay, so with that, thank you very much for your time today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Poon, for taking us through SFC's sustainability plans and an overview of SFC's partnership with ESGpedia. And with that, we will now move on to the Q&A session with our speakers from today. May I invite the following speakers back on stage to take a seat, please. Mr. Leung, Ben, Mr. Chen, Mr. Yo, Mr. Kasdin, Mr. Tan, and Ms. Poon, please. For our in-person audience, if you would like to ask a question, please raise your hand and a mic will be passed to you for you to ask your question. Alternatively, you may also post your question on the Slido that will appear soon on the screen. And for our online audience, please also use the Slido to post your question as well. Thank you, speakers. Do we have any questions from the live audience, please? If not, maybe I can get the ball rolling with a general question to the whole panel. So throughout this whole afternoon, we've seen solutions that each of your companies provide that bring to the sustainability space. So my question is, when you communicate the value proposition of your solution to your clients, what are the common queries or doubts that your clients have, and how do you resolve them? Okay, maybe Mr. Kasdin, would you like to start first?
Sure. I think one of the big issues that they have is that it's easy to give numbers and information, but they want to know how robust the data is. And that's what we really liked about the STACS approach, that they're using very robust methodologies.
They just started our question, so I think might take a while.
I think for us, many of the clients, they are also very much wanted to be educated as part of this process. So it's not just the platform itself, but often in times they also ask, can you have training partners? Can you help us learn better about the different framework and so on? So that's why I think as part of the solution offering, we need to have partners that can provide these kind of training to help upskill the clients as well.
Thank you. For CDP, we have a Credit Solution Partner Program. In fact, Envision is a partner from yesterday, and I'll be talking to the potential partners here. We're non-advisory, so we always like to bring in solution partners into the conversation for our client base, 20,000 companies. And one of the issues is the capacity for them to disclose. ESG is only just become relevant, right? It's been there, but only taken on significant relevance in the last couple of years since COP26. And not every corporation has a CSO or capability to disclose, but it has got to be mandatory going forward if we are to meet the net zero target, and everyone needs to disclose, because if you don't measure, you can't manage. And so we counteract that by having webinars, building capacity. I think my team, Southeast Asia and Oceania, has probably done upwards of 20 webinars on TCFD training and questionnaire training, as well as attending many events and hosting events I'm talking, like, for instance, here or with other institutions. So we're trying to put a full court press on it.
Okay, for the fashion industry, our members, I think we tend to think that they know more and they want to communicate that, but sometimes they can go down the path of the slippery slope if they do not know which are the standards and really what the claims mean. So I think that's the danger part, that we hope that through education, through having a very good clarity in terms of what the standards, the relevant standards and what they mean, that will bring the light to the industry.
I think one important factor to bring more engagement would be a alignment of interests. So different personas, the small, medium enterprises, they have a different need. Okay, they also have different interests. Most of them would be more focused on making money because they're trying to, survive. Okay, so therefore there needs to be some interest or incentive for them to be doing this in the first place, right? And that's where their clients or investor, right, would have to be able to drive that, and so the larger companies who are the buyer, will have to request, for them to hit a certain level of standards. Okay, and of course, as we get to see this alignment of interest in partnership with the financial sector, we will then therefore be able to see a more coordinated effort.
Yeah, so I mean, as a commercial platform, I think that basically we want to address the incentive issue, right? So we want to make a premium discoverable, transparent, and basically you can account for it, right? And then at the same time, if you work with financial institutions, the CFO will be like, hey, this is interesting, right? And then when the CFO is involved, dollars and cents, ultimately dollars and cents make the world go round, right? So we truly believe that's why we have the trading platform whereby you can segregate, different, I would say, data points and then create price discovery for data, right? So that's something that we would like to see. And I think that again creates incentives and basically move the industry forward.
I think clients, when they come to us, I think one of the things is whether we know our stuff and where are we. So BV prides itself in being in more than 140 countries around the world, and we are involved in many, many sectors, marine and offshore, industry, oil and gas. We are all over. So we are in a unique position to really help clients with their questions, where they want to check on their suppliers in terms of, let's say, ESG commitments, whether they want to reach out to different parties that, for example, in the FinTech sector, BV is not naturally here, but because BV stretches across the globe, both geographically and also across sectors, we are in a very good position to actually liaise with different parties to get the knowledge partners on board, like our partnership with Evercomm, and building this larger collaboration in the ecosystem of FinTech. I think this is a really a nice platform moving forward for us. Yeah.
Thank you so much, speakers. Do we have any questions from the live audience? If not, let's move on to the Slido questions. Oh, yes.
Just a quick question. I was reading a report now because his SBC labeled the sustainable finance, but apparently upon discovery, most of these bonds are not sustainable. So my question is, how you reconcile the fact all these data and not knowing that the bond issued by his SBC is not sustainable, because some of the so-called green sustainable bonds has been funding building oil pipeline in East Africa, floating oil rig to mine carbon bond in Brazil, and it's clear greenwashing. And the CEO of SIBC is dumb, muted when questioned, So my question is coming back to all this thing we were talking about now, yeah? The big boss are simply greenwashing under your nose. And secondly, it's just like Dutch Bank, And even you find them, it's just like a slap on the wrist. So it's revert back to all these things. It's just like COP26 saying that we got $1 trillion for us. Question is, where the $1 trillion, So I'm sitting here asking my question, whether should I subscribe to all these when the big boss making a joke out of it? Thank you.
All right, thanks for the question. Waiting for the fire alarm. No, kidding. Right, so, but anyway, joking. Yeah, but I think you brought up a great point, and I'm very aligned with your point. I think this is also one of the motivations that we have, to bring greater transparency to the industry. So, I do not really think that the banks, that you mentioned, are intentionally trying to defraud or cheat. Right? Quite frankly, I think they have too much to lose to be doing that. Of course, I'm by nature a little bit more optimistic. I think that maybe they are not having enough information on their hands anyway. Right? So that's where I think technology is trying to resolve this. Where firstly, a lot of these products have been issued already. With technology, we could actually call it expose, if you like, expose certain truths. Okay, we could definitely be able to use data to call out certain discrepancies, and this will definitely form a disincentive for anybody who's trying to game the system, right? Okay, and if you talk about the banks issuing those products, right, actually ultimately they are issuing it for their client. Okay, so could they have been misled? This I do not know for sure, right? Only they will know, right?
Correct you, because this, I'm in the side with this, yeah. Because the problem that we always have, we get angel running around, and this guy or else it will be issued by ESPC. But the bond is issued by ESPC. It's not for the client. Your renewal bond, whatever bond. But sometimes green bond can become so green, but it's not green.
Yeah, but the point is not the HSBC bond, right? It's a corporate bond. Oh yeah. Yeah. So I was going to say that because they are trying to help. Yeah. Yeah. That's why we have experts here.
Okay, I wouldn't say I'm an expert, but I think there are two aspects to it. So one thing is to look at what we know and what we do not know. Often, right, we are in this frame of mind where we do the best we can with all the knowledge we have at this point. The bond could have been approved on the best intentions, but as we move forwards, a lot of things shifts and new knowledge comes out, new scientific data comes out, and all of a sudden you are in the wrong position. So I think this is the situation that could be the case. May not be intentional. We need to look behind what is actually behind those decisions to give a fair judgment to the banks involved in this case. The other thing is also, BV is also in the view of this verification, in impact reporting. In our work, for example, Climate Bond Initiative, we do have, for example, verifications post-issuance, so that we make sure that after we issue the bond, we go down, we measure the impact, we monitor it, we verify it in that sense, and then this will give a good assurance that even when new knowledge comes up, we are there in time to be able to give advice on how to make the rectifications so that we progress along and give everybody a fair chance to actually progress with the times and improve on our sustainability. Because really, this field is changing very fast, right? Here we have FinTech, wow, so much data. Next day will be overwhelmed with data already. But we are here, the ecosystem is here to reason it all out, and we hope that we can progress from here. Thanks.
Sorry, I'd just like to add that bond that you talked about is rated. So the question should be asked to the rating agency, whether that's a MSCI, et cetera, because they buy CDP data, but they also have their own black box methodology, and they are for profit. So the greenwashing, in inverted commas, happens at a ratings level, right? The banks are just playing by the rules. So the question really is to ask to the ratings agency how transparent you are, how are you really rating, what is your methodology, to confirm whether that is a truly green bond. And I'll give you an example. There's quite a good Bloomberg article about MSCI giving McDonald's a higher ESG rating, yet McDonald's grew as a business, sold more beef, and obviously increased their GHG emissions. So you have to question, just because they used less plastic or less packaging, why is their ESG rating gone up when you've sold more, cleared more land, killed more cows, sold more beef? So it's down to the ratings agency. So that's where I would lobby and question.
But again, the foreign rating agency, there's no such standard. MCI can do something. You get like this filter of CDP, MCI.
But that comes down to you then have to ask MAS. You then have to engage regulators, GFANs, etc. World Bank. You'd have to lobby and put pressure on that side of regulations to come up with a acceptable ESG rating standard or methodology framework to follow. These ratings agencies make very good money. As CDP, we're an NGO, so that's why a lot of independent investor signatories trust us, because we have prime data that's voluntarily disclosed. But it's just the point I want to make. Not so much about the banks, but about the rating agencies.
Thank you, gentlemen, for the great discussion, and we can definitely continue after this. So I believe there's a question behind.
Hi, thanks. I'm Chris from Global Compact Network Singapore, and thanks for sharing with us today. I just have a question here in terms of a company disclosure. Where do you draw the line between critical information to disclose versus sensitive and confidential information? How do you actually draw the line? Is there any best practices? Thank you.
Give it to the lawyer, I guess. So I'm a lawyer as well as the head of sustainability at Maxeon. So, I mean, there are obviously confidential information is confidential, so that's governed by that. I mean, it's very sensitive, the decisions about what you disclose. I mean, for us, we're listed on NASDAQ, so we're very much governed by reporting guidelines from NASDAQ. Definitely, you want to share as much information as you can about a lot of these social metrics. So I guess I'll just jump. There was a To Matthew question up there. And so as far as what we're looking for from our suppliers, which is what we do disclose, is the E data, which is on our emissions and on our waste. We also have S data. And the S data, the most important S data for our customers, which we do disclose publicly, is our female representation, both in terms of our people leaders that are female and in terms of our board representation that's female. And the last one is a lot more sensitive, I guess, which is our industry is very dogged by forced labor. So we are very careful about making sure we don't have any forced labor and our disclosure around that, making sure that people know that we have robust policies in place to control that.
When it comes to data, obviously the organizations that we work with are all big listed companies, or they're generally their tier one supply chain, and the data can be voluntarily disclosed and public, or if it's if it's decided not to be public, then it's anonymized and the privacy is protected. Some corporations are now considering their climate change plans as very strategic and would not want to disclose because it's becoming a competitive advantage. So it just becomes anonymized. If you were to Google, say, DBS share price, and you come up with all the market cap data, and you scroll across, you'll see a CDP score because they've elected to allow their climate change plans to be public. So there are some public ones. When it comes to supply chain, that's very private to the likes of Walmart and Apple and people like that. So it's a little bit horses for courses. Regulations coming, SEC regulation proposed, mandatory disclosure, so your sustainability report, the level of detail, that's going to be open to public, especially as a listed company.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. And I know there's a live question in the audience, but let's go through one Slido question first. The question is to Carolyn. Is there sufficient regulatory push locally to get fashion companies to disclose Scope 3 emissions, and what will get them there?
Okay, so we're answering this question in the local context, which is in Singapore. So first off, I think in the case of Singapore, the regulations is around the fashion industry is largely in terms of corporate reporting. So it is less so in terms of sector-specific reporting. Of course, there are some standards relating to the sector to make sure that their operations are in line with, say, ISO standards and all. But as the regulator today, which will be MSE, I guess, and they are still light in terms of sector-level initiatives for this. However, having said that, when you look at Scope 3 initiatives, right? Scope 3 emissions. So you're looking at initiatives like packaging, where you can reduce this, and then that will be cross-sector kind of sector regulations. So I think I try to answer the question in two ways. One is that specifically no regulations, but then if you look cross-sector, yes, there'll be regulations that are touching on that.
Thank you very much, and we have the live question.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the sharing and the insights. I'm one of the PwC ESG partners. So normally we work with clients and we advise the clients with different sectors, and I know that you work with...
See, time's up. I'm sure you could hear me. So if I could flip the table and ask you all for advice. So what would you advise PwC? What are the things that you would like us to do more in contributing all this collaboration and drive the ESG journey? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think from our perspective, we work with PwC. They helped us with our sustainability report, and that was phenomenal as far as all of the numbers. I think that as far as what extra value PwC could add is that we always have a hard time communicating all the numbers to our customers in terms of how sustainable we are, because we have our sustainability report. It's a long report, very dense, lots of numbers. I don't know how many people actually read the whole thing. The rating agencies, probably CDP, but a lot of people maybe don't read the whole thing. So I think that what would be very useful is maybe more help with how to do storytelling for our customers to take them on the journey with us, maybe kind of the softer side, because we know we have the hard side coming from PwC, but the softer side as well.
So PwC is actually a partner of ours in China, and we actually do partner with the Big Four on various levels globally. In fact, EY is a recent global partner of ours. In terms of engagement, really you have access to the largest corporates in the world, and do they all disclose? Right? Do they all have science-based targets? Right? How committed are their boards to net zero by 2050 and neutral by 2030? So you are for profit, I get that, but actually it's been shown through various research. I think STOCS, STOXX indices, has shown that those companies that adopt a sustainable path early on are actually more competitive than those that don't, because of the general innovation that goes on within those companies to look at renewables, look at reducing and how they operate. So from my perspective and engaging with the Big Four and Big Three consultancies, it's action speaks louder than words, right? You've really got to focus on the outcome as opposed to the theory and the strategy. You can produce as many reports as you want, we do, but what is the action from that?
I was going to add to John's point. PwC is known as the Big Four and is a global leader. And yes, being a leader, therefore, I think we could try to have a more holistic solution approach. And I'm speaking not just in my capacity at STACS, but I do have a few other solution providers and service providers here. So a lot of the things that PwC advises could be implemented, with solutions here. Okay, with services here, verification service, attestation service, and of course tax services. And that's where I think it's also helpful to PwC clients when they are able to understand that there's a one-stop solution from you, okay, to have an easier approach towards sustainability. Yeah.
That's a really good point. And there's an old saying that you don't get fired for hiring IBM. Basically, there's a bit of snobbery when it comes to large organizations adopting innovative FinTech tech impact solutions because they see a little company that's got a great solution, but they're frightened to use that solution because it might be 10 people, it might be 100 people, right? But we're like big XYZ multi-billion-dollar company, and we can't be seen, decision making can't be seen to be adopting this innovative company. And I think that's the barrier that a lot of large corporations need to drop, because there's so many good companies from yesterday and today that have great solutions, and there's those solutions. There's no one silver bullet, right? It's a combination of solutions that any organization needs to adopt to get to net zero, right?
One interesting observation I've seen recently when we talk to different clients, I think the Big Four company, I'm not singling up to PwC, but I think for the Big Four auditors, they often look things from the financial perspective. And for clients, usually they like shortcut rather than getting it down. And often in times, I think it's quite important for the auditor to really push down on what is considered, being clever or what is considered trying to avoid. So I'll give you one example. And this one I heard from multiple clients that when we're talking about scope 3 emissions, right? If the companies are doing something, transportation allowance is a very simple example. If you're giving transportation allowance to your employees, you should count that towards your transportation side of things. But increasingly, clients are being clever and they're asking the auditor, can I just now declare allowance instead of transportation allowance? So technically, I don't know it's transport, so I don't disclose that. And unfortunately, when this kind of question asked to us, when we check with what does the auditor tells you, all of them say, sure, you know? So I think these are the things that we should increasingly be more stringent on the customer, knowing that there's some room to play around, but this kind of wording and so on is something that probably is better to educate the clients and so on. I'm not saying PwC is doing that, but just that we're getting a lot of feedback from clients these days when they're trying to disclose their scope 3 emission.
Thank you very much, speakers. And we have one question from Slido. Can data be verified without a live human being? And maybe, Gerald, you might want to take this because you have been a little bit quiet. And yes, you do run Agridence, yeah.
Without a live human being? I mean, depends on what kind of verification, right? So it really, if it's quantitative, then I would say absolutely that's quite easy, right? But if it's qualitative, then I would say no, right? And especially if it's in agriculture, which is our industry, then absolutely not, right? But having said that, I mean, obviously you can look at using satellite imagery, all that kind of stuff to complement, right? So I don't think we need to look at whether is it verified with or without, but I would say looking at like what area the data, you know, that is more important. Sorry, but I would like to also address the PwC point, right? So hopefully it doesn't cause a fire alarm. But No. So I think it is very key to have private conversations with clients. I think there is a lot of reporting being done already, right? That's fantastic. But I think the private conversations, the quantification, and also creating steps for them, and to let them see success stories in a private basis. Like, hey, your competitors X, Y, Z. So, I mean, obviously sharing to the limit that you can share, have success stories, and this is how you should embark, you know, to create a competitive advantage. Again, get the CFO's attention. How do you position your financials? How do you tell the story? I mean, storytelling is fantastic, right? But absolutely, you need to let them know your competitors are doing this. This is what you can do, right? So a little bit of FOMO there, but absolutely, I think that works because you have an intimate relationship with them in private, because a lot of them, in publicly, they say something, but in private, they do something else. So, and you would know best. Yeah.
Thank you. And because the mic is quite close to Mr. Yeo, maybe I can also ask to Mr. Yeo, any plans to require the wafer fab industry to report their water recycling rates as part of mandatory disclosure, given their huge water consumption? And I was wondering if you could answer that because you do have some expertise in certification.
Okay, for wafer fab industry, I think it's one of the key sectors to look at for example, carbon taxation. So this is an area of sustainability that we deal with. With regard to water recycling, I think in terms of water management is something that is already in the limelight. It also happens to be one of the key indicators that's more easily quantified because there are water meters around. So definitely there can be more improvements there, but whether there is a requirement, I think this will definitely go up to the regulatory agencies to consider. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mr. Yeo. All right, we have one question. Can CDP share more about the SME questionnaire?
Have you signed my NDA? CDP already deals with SMEs. I mean, out of the 20,000 entities that disclose to us, about 4,000 are listed and the rest are not, right? The rest are essentially SMEs, depending on how you define SMEs. So we feel very passionate about that space. I was talking to Ben, and Ben's done some research, and he says there's 200 million SMEs in the world. And if you discount that figure of active SMEs, it's probably, let's say, if it's just 50 million, it's still a huge number compared to listed companies. And as referenced before, it's about scope 3, right? So if you have to engage SMEs to get them to be sustainable and reduce scope 3. So can I reveal more about the SME questionnaire? Well, we have got a framework which we developed out of the UK with We Mean Business Coalition and the SME Climate Hub. And we will be globally launching our SME questionnaire in 2023 to make it accessible for all SMEs to disclose, however big or small you are. So typically an SME is sort of, depending on whose definition of it, it would be normally 200 million revenue and below, and 500 employees and below, like a combination of the two. But generally, we'll probably, like in this market, looking at 50 million and below, or and emerging SMEs at about 10 million and below. And I was talking to a leading local bank, and that's kind of their definition: 40 million and below, 10 million below, yeah, in terms of revenue.
Thank you very much. And I have one question for Mr. Chen. To Evercomm, how do you ensure that the data from the IoT devices are accurate, given that it will impact the data in the final report?
In our experience so far, all the data that we pull from system, hardly they're accurate, right? Most of the time, 50% of them are not so accurate. So this is an issue, but it's easy to identify that, because when you're talking about pulling data from a complex system, having data coming in every minute, it's very easy to use algorithms to pick those. And for people to trying to play around with one particular sensor data, they often forget the thermodynamics behind the whole system. So it's very easy to counter-track. So for us, we don't see much issue in terms of validating whether the data coming from a system is accurate or not, because there are many ways to do it. And once we see it's not accurate, we simply just don't process those until they fix those data. So I don't think the issue in terms of validation is from the system side. It's more troublesome for the part that when user upload information, record, procurement, those are actually harder to validate. But system level data is quite easy to know that it's not accurate, and then you can just don't process it until the client fix that issue.
Thank you. And I have one question for Carolyn. Carolyn, what are your thoughts on fast fashion and brands like Shein?
Okay, so I generally would not like to single out any particular companies, but I think fast fashion as a business model typically works on two efficiencies. One is they really reduce the supply chain, so they get to market fast. So then, from there they reduce the they reduce the time to market, and then they have more collections coming out, and that's how they turn over, and that's how they win the customers. Now, in the Shein model, again, I have not done the investigation myself, but what I read from the public reports, is probably what some of you would have read as well, is that their business model is around very tightly coupled, supplier management. Small batch quantities, very tightly managed suppliers or factories, and then good data forecasting, and therefore, getting out to the market faster, because you don't have to print hundreds of pieces of small, medium, and large sizes. You just think that this pattern will work, and you ship in 50 pieces and then go. That's how it is. I do know that they probably would have air freight their products as well. So that also contributes to faster time to market. But of course, there is that GHG implications to that. So I guess I think coming back to fast fashion as an industry, and going back to my earlier point that the industry will still grow, okay, whether it's out of population growth, or whether it is out of, just that consumption power is growing. I mean, Southeast Asia, we are looking at the growing consumer base, right, of 660 million and growing. And by 2050, this is going to be one of the largest consumer base. And so there is growth. And I think how do we fund that growth? Producing fashion products. Is it fun, meaning how do we, extract raw materials for it, right? Is it growing cotton, which is going to be increasing costs, as I mentioned earlier? Less than 1% of the cotton output today is sustainable organic cotton. So you can see that really the idea of moving to sustainable cotton, right? It's or organic cotton it's going to take longer to see that come to pass. So, how do we actually fund growth in production? And I think definitely in the next 2 or 3 years, we'll see a massive, more mass scale, commercial scale innovations in terms of using recycled materials and using recycled materials to channel into growth. And also in propagation of circular business models, rental, swapping, and all that. That will be a more sustainable lifestyle that we hope that as all of us, we will also incorporate these into our consumption habits. Yeah.
Can I just say something? So for those of you who can recognize my accent, it's from Manchester, England, and I had the privilege to be back there between 2015 and 2019, and that is the home of Boohoo, Misguided, and In the Style. Those are fast fashion iconic brands that you would recognize. That's certainly out of the UK, but also they work internationally. So I had many friends in that industry. And one of the things about, I really disagree with that industry, to be honest, because the water consumption level is massive, and obviously you've got the S&G implications as well in terms of manufacturing. But people forget that when you are, I was quoted an example by a friend of mine who was a COO of one of these organizations, and it is people, teenagers, they'll select 10 items and they will return 7 of them. And that, because they're allowed to do that, and that's just because that's the way the model works, right? You just select your buy and then there's a free return. So people are just buying what they want and then just resending it back. And just think of the carbon footprint and the packaging involved in those returns. So now I think that is slightly changing. People are starting to charge for returns or trying to make people a little bit more aware of that, stopping doing that. So it's not just the cotton and everything, but it's the whole supply chain side of it and how it works, the last mile as well. Just thought I'd point that out as a consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Leung and Carolyn. I think Mr. Leung actually addressed the question on unnecessary and overconsumption in fashion, so that's great. And we have one question for BV, Evercomm, and also STACS. Given that everyone is like partners with each other, how would you envision a 3-way partnership? And maybe Mr. Yo?
Okay, so I guess really it comes down to the role that we see ourselves as playing, right? So a BV comes in as like a carbon verifier. We are accredited verifier of quite a number of schemes, right? Let's say ISO, carbon credit schemes. We are that verification partner. I see Evercomm as really value adding in the sense of knowing how to implement AI on the ESG data solutions, so they can implement IoT solutions and different kind of digital solutions that really help to collect the critical data that you need to get this data solution, let's say, offered by STACS, right? So you can open it up to all. So really, each of us play our specific role, and our advice also comes in from the perspective of, let's say, Evercomm wants to collect certain data, and it should meet towards certain sustainability standards, certain carbon standards, right? So we are able to give that advice on what kind of data we should collect, where are the data sources supposed to be. Maybe we can discuss a bit on how the data will be processed. Eventually, we want to come up with a data platform that's verified. And in that sense, with STACS, we are able to open this data, open source to all, to really give that value, transparency, the accountability with the expertise we each have. Yeah.
I think the great point is all three of us provide services at different levels that the customer needs. And besides just the obvious of helping customers collect data, verify these data for particular standards or credits, and also put it into STACS platform so that it's easier for them to get green financing, trading carbon credits, and so on. I think one of the key things that we're trying here is also when we get into these specific industry, there's a lot of local domain know-how. For example, what emission factor should I use for this sector, for that sector? What are the regulations I should follow? These are the things that even we are in Singapore, we don't know. For example, Thailand different from Taiwan, different from different places, and this is where we really leverage on the expertise where BV has offices in almost everywhere. And once we have those informations, we can actually make those basic information more available into ESGpedia, so that moving forward, similar companies in those environments, it's easier for them to disclose. I think the whole idea is to help to simplify the journey of disclosing accurate information so that everyone can be part of this journey.
And also, I'd like to summarize by saying that actually such a three-way partnership is not exclusive or limited, right? We could do more in other sectors. We could also partner with other companies. We have many partnerships actually right in this room right now, where we are handling different parts of the value chain because, if you look at the sequential flow, right, there's somebody that needs to collect the data, somebody needs to analyze the data, somebody needs to verify the data, and then it comes to us, right? And then once the data is on our platform, somebody needs to make it into a product. It could be trade finance, SG TradeX is in the house too, right? So yeah, it could be a trade finance, it could be green finance, it could be, any type of financial product or any type of financial analysis or any type of AI service. So, that's where there are different types of different partnerships could all be created. Okay, and that's what we are all about, the fact that we are trying to get everybody in the same room, okay, because we know that there's going to be a lot more collective efforts, okay, to be able to put together the level of, scale that we need to be able to overcome all these problems. And the same problem that I brought up, the gentleman at the back, right? So those are the problems we're trying to solve. When we have all of these together, we can be able to prevent these problems from coming true.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. And we have cleared the Slido questions. Do we have any live questions? If not, thank you very much, speakers, for your time, and please return to your seats. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we have now come to the end of the Greenprint Registry Showcase, brought to you by STACS and our official event partners, PwC Singapore and Singapore FinTech Association. Through the showcases, we hope you've gained some insight about ESGpedia and how it's already in place and empowering multiple sectors towards sustainability and net zero. To all in-person attendees, we will now commence the networking session. And to all who are joining us virtually, thank you for being part of this event and have a good evening.